So we just wanted to sit with you and talk about your entrepreneurial journey. So if you could tell us a little bit about yourself and how you started within your entrepreneurial journey, and what is your passion? Where does that come from?
Yeah, the entrepreneurial journey kind of started out of the pandemic. You know, I think for a lot of people, during the pandemic was a time of self-reflection. A lot of time with yourself, asking yourself if what you're doing day to day is fulfilling you. Are there dreams that you've always wanted to try and accomplish? I think it was a good reminder that tomorrow's not promised. And so just like how that thought process affected a lot of people, it also affected myself. I think for me it was like a pretty unique experience because I never really had the opportunity just to work from home or really encounter the pandemic like a lot of people, because I was out on the front lines kind of reporting on everything that was going down, which was super heavy on the mind, heart, soul, all those things. So the few moments that I did have to self-reflect, I really asked myself, you know, is what I'm doing really fulfilling my soul and my ambitions? And part of that answer was, I feel like there was a lot more to give. And there was a lot more to take a risk on and a lot more to try. And so I kind of came to that conclusion in the midst of the pandemic. And I had a very small bubble that I was operating in. And that bubble included some really talented creatives and business-minded folks. And it was just like, almost like the universe had kind of put everybody together in this one small space, and the combustion, is that the word? Is that a combustion? Yeah. Combustion of ideas and energy just aligned, and it just created this idea of why not start like a media company, a show, and just do things a little bit differently. So that's kind of how it started. And media has always been a passion of mine. I've loved media, I've loved news, I've loved content since young. Like I used to watch the newscasts growing up. Dwight Drummond, I've always talked about this story, was like the guy I would always watch with his earring in one ear. I got two, he only did one at the time. And I just thought it was just fascinating. Like I always wanted to do that. And I realized like over time that it wasn't just about doing that. You could do so much more in that realm. Like starting Gonez Media, GMI, which is Canada's fastest growing.
You said a key word, which I feel like a lot of entrepreneurs can connect to, risk.
Yeah.
When you get into entrepreneurship, you are not just taking a risk on yourself, you're taking a risk around everyone around you, because there's so much support that's needed.
Yeah.
What did you jumping into that look like? What risks were you taking? What things were you leaving behind to now take this new journey forward?
Yeah, I mean,
Sorry.
Well, it's a big one. No, it was a massive risk because I think for a lot of people, they look at where I was before this as like the pinnacle of where you can be, because that's all we kind of ever saw. Like if you got that position in front of the camera, sitting at that desk or being out there holding that mic, like that is the, you know, the grandest thing you can do and achieve within this industry. And I think like for me, you know, this was like my career path. Like as soon as I got out of school, I've been able to see what happens behind the scenes, what happens in front of the scenes, you know, and I always thought like, man, like everybody thinks it's so great being in front of the camera, and there are some benefits to that, but like what about being behind the camera? What about being able to make the decisions of who gets to go where? What about being the person who says, you know, I'm gonna allot this budget to this particular project because this particular topic is really important? Yeah. And all of those decisions is based off of your own self-perspective, your own prism of how you look at the world. And a lot of people don't realize like that's really where the power lies, you know? And so for me, the risk was, okay, so let me go and try to create this thing, this whole new world, okay, in this digital world. It's never really been done in this country. And my biggest thing was, you know, will people support? One thing about me, I always believed in myself. I never did not believe in myself. You know, my background is Jamaican, that's how we're taught. Like you gotta go for it, you gotta do it. But it was, will other people believe in the vision? And so that was really the risk. Yes, that steady paycheck was a risk, but I always believed like, whether I'm doing media, whether it's finance like I was in before, whether it's gonna be retail, I don't know. I'm gonna find a way to make a check. Okay, there's one thing BG knows how to do it is make a check. And I'm sure a lot of people out there can relate to that. But it's, can you actually, truly say to yourself, I'm gonna bet all in on myself. And so that was the biggest risk. And you know what? With big risk come big reward. Big reward.
I love it. I should crack up too much. Talking about our rewards, what has been the most rewarding thing, taking all the risks, taking down doors, but also doing it while being Black?
These are great questions because I can't ever pinpoint one thing because I feel like the rewards are so bountiful. I can start off by saying being able to start something that's been so successful from the jump and has continuously grown, and mind you, we've had major hiccups, but to provide avenues and create these opportunities for people who also look like me, who have been not welcome in other spaces and have had the talent and the drive and the determination, but discrimination is a real thing in this country, and sometimes that discrimination blocks your level of opportunity of how far you can rise up. So here, that talent is rising. That talent is flourishing, that talent is succeeding, and we're showing what like-minded people can create and do. The same people who've been told, no, you can't be in this room, you can only be in that room. You know what I'm saying? So there's that. I think it's the power of storytelling that we can drive our stories now. We're not begging a news director who don't look like us that, oh, this story's important, please, please. No time for begging. We know the story is important here, so we're gonna do this story. You don't gotta beg here for the stories that we know are important to our community. And that's across all communities, but I am Black. And one of the passions here is that, I've worked in so many newsrooms where Black stories that pertain to the BIPOC community, other people of color, Indigenous folks, they were not taken seriously. They were not. And I'm telling you, I was one of those people begging, please, please. Why am I begging? No time to beg. Yeah.
When it comes to some of the blockages and barriers that you have encountered while diving into entrepreneurship, what did that look like? Because the thing is, I think a lot of entrepreneurs forget that sometimes you can apply for grants, you get funding that's just here and there to do little maintenance. Yeah. But in order to evolve, you need to kind of navigate the funding.
Yeah.
What did that look like for you?
One of the biggest barriers is just the credibility of when people look at you, based off of when they look at you. Yeah. And people don't talk about that enough. We know about the overt racism and discrimination, but that systemic discrimination where you walk into a room and you're not immediately looked at as credible. You almost have to prove yourself a little bit more. That takes a toll. And that shows up in all different ways, whether you send a proposal to a client because you have a vision, or a bank, or an institution, a financial institution for funding, and they might ask for more and more and more. Whether somebody with blonde hair, blue eyes walks in the proposal and it's just this seems like it can happen. Somebody who looks like myself might not have that same level of grace. I'm not saying it can happen, I'm just saying I've heard and I know from lived experience that it happens far too often, where you have to continuously work twice as hard, 3 times as hard, prove yourself for the same level of opportunity. So then you have to get creative. And I might be trailing off from your question here, but one of the barriers is just that. It's the extra toll that it takes for any Black person of color entrepreneur to have that same level of credibility to access those funding opportunities. On top of the other things is that, we come from a community where, we're not starting at the same start line as everybody else. So we don't know a lot of things, or a lot of things have not been necessarily passed down to us. Like in other communities. Maybe some families have been blessed by that. My family wasn't. We're hard workers, but entrepreneurship wasn't really a thing that we could see ourselves through. There's a huge entrepreneurial spirit in my family, but how to harness that was never really taught to us. So it is kind of like a learning game in a way. And you really have to rely on trusted peers and allies and mentors to help guide you through those things. And I'm happy that there are now programs like FACE, for example, where people who don't have access, that social capital, right? Because maybe you didn't get a chance to go to university and meet like-minded people, because we have to talk about that. Like, there is a privilege in being able to attend a post-secondary institution, have a social network. That's social capital. Some people don't have that, but they still have the entrepreneurial spirit. Now they can access a resource like FACE, for example, and get that. And that helps to level the playing field, put everybody closer to the same start line, you know?
If you were to like envision what we can do in this moment now to really elevate Black-owned businesses, to take it to the next level, to really surpass those barriers, to really excel in the ways that we should and be seen by the world without all of the discrimination, what would that look like to you?
Oh, it's such a multifaceted approach. I believe it starts with the community first. So the community, our community, has to make a considered effort to say, I'm going to support businesses that are owned by people who look like me. And it's not to say that other businesses owned by people who don't look like you are not businesses worth supporting. It's again reminding ourselves that we're starting from a different start line, right? We're not starting from the same start line. So we have to be intentional about supporting and getting our businesses to a level where they then can start to support other initiatives within the community. Strong Black-owned businesses in the community then can support nonprofits within that community, can start community-led projects, can donate back to certain things, right? Like it's community building, number one. Number two, we live in a capitalistic society, right? So huge companies have to be intentional about making sure that they're giving contracts and actively looking for businesses who are minority-led, specifically Black-led. It can't just be a February thing. It needs to be an all year round thing. Because again, if you're a Black-led organization and you're applying for these RFPs, right, requests for proposals, or you're applying for a project, you're gonna face some systemic barriers. We have to be honest about that. We have to say that out loud. And so if the money's not flowing there, right, you're hampering that effect. So it's like when I say a multifaceted approach, like the community has to show that they're intentional about supporting. Big corporations, medium-sized corporations have to show that they're intentional about supporting. And then the government also has to make sure that they're doing their job, as they govern the society and as they acknowledge that there are systemic barriers, that they are trying to dismantle those barriers as well. So if all three pillars are working together, we'll see a society and an ecosystem where you're not surprised when you hear like this person started this business, it's 7-figure business, 8-figure business, and they're dark skinned, and they come from immigrants. Why is that a surprise? It shouldn't be a surprise. It should be the norm. Just like it's a norm if a CEO who owns a 8-figure business walks in and they're a white man and thing, like that's the norm for us. Everybody believes that's the norm, right? It should be the norm it doesn't matter what you look like, that should be the norm. But specifically for Black people, we have to make it the norm. And every one of those pillars has to be intentional about making that the norm. So my job, in my little lane here, doing media, owning a media company, is to show as many of those things as possible, so it becomes normalized.
What's next for you? What's next on your plateau? You don't need to share
Ooh,
all your
next.
secrets, but what do you have up your sleeves that may take things for your business to the next level that you're able to share?
One thing that we're doing is we have such a strong support system in Southern Ontario, and that's expanded across the province. And over the last year, our audience has been growing substantially across the country and internationally. So I can't get into exact details, but what I can say is, our intention, right now we are Canada's fastest growing online media company. We want to be the biggest digital media company in the country. No longer the fastest, but the biggest. That is one of our goals. How we're going to get there, I can't share, but we will get there. There's no ifs and or buts, it's about when. Yeah.